Kern Golden Empire Television. Kern County In Depth with 17's Jim Scott.
Hello and welcome to Kern County In Depth. I'm Eytan Wallace in for Jim Scott, and today we have former Republican Congressman David Valadao, who represented the 21st Congressional District for 3 terms, specifically from 2013 to 2019. Mr. Valadao, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for taking the time.
No, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. So let me just first start by asking you, last time we saw each other, it was for your exit interview as you were departing office just as you had been defeated. So what have you been up to since you left office?
You know, I've been working with my family, spending a lot of time on the farm and helping my dad and my brothers out, and obviously spending a lot of time at home with my wife and kids, and it's been good.
And how are things on the farm?
You know, good. Prices are a little bit better now, and so that's been very, very helpful. At the very end of my time in Congress, we barely were able to see a little bit of an increase there, and that's actually had a really good impact for a lot of farmers, dairy farmers all across the country, including my family.
Indeed. So let's switch tides here just a little bit. You're here to make a very important announcement about your future, so let me get right to it. What is your announcement? Well,
I'm announcing today that I'm running for the 21st Congressional District. I think we need some real leadership there. These past 8 months have been really frustrating to watch. Someone who served in Congress and spent some time there and know how hard it is to get things done. But I also understand where you need to make those efforts, and I feel like we haven't had that, and I feel that we need someone to step up and do a good job. Spent a lot of time around the community, and I've had a lot of folks approaching me and talking to me and asking me to think about it again, and I'm here to say that I'm doing it. I'm going forward with it.
So there you have it, folks. David Valadao announcing he is running for the 21st Congressional District seat. If he would win, it would be his 4th term representing the district. So let me ask you then, why are you running?
Well, like I said, it's very important to have a representative in the 21st Congressional District that fights for the people that live here. These are my neighbors, my friends, people that I grew up with. This is my community. This is the area that I love. And looking across the country and seeing what's going on in Washington, where it's literally just fighting, hearing from all my constituents who have been reaching out to the representative and reaching out and hoping that Washington will actually do something, they've seen nothing get done. It's just bickering, it's just fighting, and that's frustrating. It's frustrating as someone who's been there and has seen it and understands how to navigate those rough waters and actually see things get done and help accomplish things get done.
So you've been out of office then for 10 months now, and you have been depressurizing on the farm, getting back to the farming life, a life that you love and you say you love, and now you want to go back to Capitol Hill. So some would say, are you crazy?
No, it's the exact same thing I started with when I first decided to run for office the first time. There's a lot of frustration out there. There's people that are frustrated with Washington, and I stepped up the first time. We made some real changes for the country, for the valley, and I'm proud of those things that we were able to accomplish. But I think there's still a lot more to do, and I'm willing to put my life out there. I'm willing to put a lot out there in making this decision. So no, it's not easy. It's not something I take easily and take lightly. My family obviously suffers from this, but it's something that we all know is very important for our country, for our future, for the next generation. And so I'm willing to step up. I'm willing to do this because it's so important for our country.
Indeed, it's an important decision for you and your family and for the district. Let me ask you then, what do you miss most about being on Capitol Hill?
So being able to play a role in things that actually affect us here at home. Nothing made me prouder than finding out that piece of legislation that I was able to put into an appropriations bill, or even a constituent casework. Sometimes even the smallest things like helping kids out who come to visit the Capitol and showing them around and telling them about what we do and helping educate the next generation. And those are the things that I miss, the opportunities to actually make a difference for the people right here in the 21st Congressional District, home for me.
People have been coming up to you over the last few months. Did someone or a group of people specifically encourage you to run?
No, it's not like I've been going to a lot of events, but yes, I live life. I live here, so taking my kids to school, grocery store, whatever other stores I walk into, or just community in general. Yeah, I've got people all the time approaching me and saying, hey, you really need to consider it. And then as news started to come out in the last few months where it looked like I was heading that direction, I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback, and so that excited me, and that made me feel like people wanted me there as well, and that helped me put me where I am today.
And going back to the last election, though, you did lose. It was very close. You lost by 862 votes, but the key word there is lost. Mm-hmm. What makes you think that you can win this time around?
Well, I think that there's a huge difference now, and people have had 8 months now to watch as Washington has literally accomplished nothing and have moved nothing. They've done nothing but fight and bicker, and when you have a representative that goes there and just adds to that type of fighting and continues to escalate the situation, all that does is hurt people here in the Central Valley, and that's very frustrating for all of us who live here and make our livings here. And it's important for us to have a representative there. And so I think there's a difference. I think there's a lot of frustration. I think there's a lot of remorse out there for what happened. Like you said earlier, it is the closest election in the nation. It was 862 votes. It was the last one called in the nation. So it wasn't by any stretch a huge number. And I think we've got a real shot. I've got a lot of momentum here with a lot of folks who are encouraging me to run and now supporting me to run. And I'm excited about this, and I think we've got a really good shot.
And what do you think will be most challenging?
Well, obviously it's going to be the same thing as it always is. It's getting the message out, making sure that we're keeping people honest with their conversations and what they're saying, because that's one of the negative things about campaigning is there are a lot of things out there that are said that aren't true, and I experienced a lot of that in the last campaign cycle. But now having 2 people on the ballot with records instead of someone with a blank slate that's never lived in the Central Valley, no real connection to it, it makes things a little bit easier for us as well.
Do you anticipate to do anything different this time around in your campaign?
Well, there are always things that we can do different and do things better. Obviously, the harvesting issue is something that we're going to be looking much closer at, and others, but making sure that we do a better job of reaching out to voters and communicating with voters and getting them to vote is something that we've got to continue to focus and excel at.
Okay, we're here with David Valadao as he announces his candidacy for the 21st Congressional District seat in 2020. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk issues with Mr. Valadao. Stay with us. Welcome back to Kern County in Depth. As you heard here, we're joined by former Congressman Republican David Valadao of the 21st Congressional District, where he represented for 3 terms, and now today he's announcing he's seeking candidacy for a 4th term. So, Mr. Congressman, first I want to talk to you about the district itself. I want to show a map on screen here. You see it there. It's a big district. The borders include parts of Bakersfield and extends as far north as Mendota. That's Fresno County, and as far as yeah, Firebaugh even, exactly, and it goes as far south as Arvin here in Kern County. So it's a district that you, David, have represented for 3 terms, 6 years. So what are the needs of the district, and why are you the one to represent the 21st?
Well, some of the biggest needs here, obviously having a reliable water supply. And that's one that you always hear of that, but it's one of the most important things because a lot of our communities struggle. We struggle with wells to produce water for the cities, subsurface, below surface water storage. Those are all things that have an impact, but it also has an impact for the people that live here. If you just on the way here to the station today, I don't know how many drilling rigs I saw that were for water, and you see this infrastructure going in place, and we have to make sure that we have a water supply for the future, for the folks that live here, for the farmers, for our economy, for everything. I think healthcare is very important to us, and that's something that I spend a lot of time on. And teaching health centers was one of the things I'm very proud of, and we're able to deliver on, making sure that we have resources available to build institutions here to help educate our next generation of doctors right here in the Central Valley to help build them build roots here and hopefully stay here and continue to treat here. And that was something that I'm very proud of and proud that I worked on and was able to accomplish. Immigration is another one that I think is very important as well. That's a huge impact here in the Central Valley on a lot of different fronts, families at home all the way to the employment level and to our economy. And so that's something that I spend a lot of time on as well, and I'm very proud of, and I think is very important for us here in the Central Valley.
And you mentioned immigration. I want to keep talking with you about policies. What is your stance on the president's border wall?
Well, I've been down to the border a number of times, 4 or 5 times. I actually spent time in tunnels. I've spent time walking the lines that folks walk through as they're coming through our immigration system. But I think it's important to make sure our border is secure. We've got an epidemic hitting us right now, and I know here in Bakersfield it's gotten out of control with drugs and with crime. And I do believe that a lot of the drugs are moved across that border. I think it's important to make sure it's secure and keep a lot of that out. And I think that border plays a role in it and making sure the infrastructure is there to protect us from that.
Some of the things you mentioned, immigration, healthcare, water, those are also issue priorities for sitting Congressman T.J. Cox, Democrat of Fresno. How do you feel the district is being represented by our sitting congressman right now?
What has he done? What bills have moved? Where has he gotten anyone on his side of the aisle to actually bring something to the table? And that's where I've always struggled. In Washington, when I introduced my water bill, for example, mine was bipartisan. I had help from both sides of the aisle. And I think that's important. And when we moved it off the House floor, I had bipartisan support for it. And so when we look at a district like this, the 21st Congressional District is one that requires bipartisan leadership. And so that's something that I brought to the table that's very different than we've got today. And I think it's important to highlight that. And when we move water legislation, we want to make sure it actually does something. Just saying that you're going to build reservoirs or spend taxpayer money on reservoirs, but no way of actually making sure it's delivered here to the Central Valley is very important to differentiate. And that's one of the biggest fights we got into. Moving water here to the Central Valley is one of the things that we struggle with the most on the Democrat side of the aisle. And so if they're serious about helping here with water, it's not just I'm going to build dams, but it's I'm going to deliver water, and that's something that we did through the WIN Act. We did make a difference. It's an improvement. Is there more to do? Absolutely. This year, when we looked at such a wet year that we had, we were record numbers of rainfall, and our farmers out on the west side only got 70% of their water. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. I wanted to see some leadership from our elected officials, making sure that that was highlighted and pushed, saying, hey, what's going on? What can we do different? And what can they bring from their side of the aisle? And where did he reach out to my side of the aisle? And that's important, to make sure that we know that our representative is someone who knows how to work with both sides of the aisle to come up with solutions that both sides can sign on to and move those forward.
I want to stay on that topic for a moment because you mentioned bipartisanship. Many of these issues is what you say, all the issues really are bipartisan. This is a district where, as you see on screen here, we have, at least in Kern County, a majority actually of Democrats, more Democrats than Republicans, and no party preference. In fact, this is a district where Hillary Clinton defeated current President Donald Trump by 15 percentage points. So what is your message to Democrats in this district?
My message is I represent everyone the same. I worked very well under Jerry Brown when I was in the state legislature. I worked with President Obama as well when he was the president, and I work with whoever's president at any one point. It doesn't matter who's the top of the ticket. It doesn't matter who's president of the United States. My goal isn't to go disrupt and to start problems in Washington for issues that don't affect us here in the Central Valley. My goal is to make sure that attention is here in the Central Valley and that we're doing everything we possibly can to make things better for the lives of everyday Americans right here in the Central Valley.
And during the last election, your opponent, Mr. Cox, we saw the campaign ads, you may remember, accused you of voting with President Trump 99% of the time. That is a claim that you always denied, and you said that the stats simply were not true. So big question for you, and this is a question that people either who love our president or hate our president, either way they want to know, how loyal are you to President Trump?
I'm loyal to the people of 21st Congressional District. I've always been. That's always been the focus. As far as that claim of the 99%, that's a joke. I mean, if you want to look at the votes and see what they actually are, if it's a vote to give our troops, the people who put their lives on the line for our country to defend our nation, and give them a raise, would he have voted against that? Because that's one of the votes that count in there. Is it a vote that is the vote to bring more water to the Central Valley? Would he have opposed that? I mean, at the end of the day, the votes are what matter. What are they? What did they do? And the focus is, I made sure that every one of those votes was something that benefited the people of the Central Valley. And so to attack on a number that's skewed at best and to sit here and play games with it is just frustrating, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure we have someone in Washington that doesn't focus on dividing, but uniting. And I'm a person that brings people to the table, makes sure that the concerns of the people here in the Central Valley are heard and taken to Washington, and that my focus is just that, not bickering, not fighting, not dividing, but bringing those issues up, getting people to the table. And I did that, and I'm happy to keep doing it.
And we've heard many people on both sides of the aisle say that the president needs a little bit of a filter. Critics say that he belittles people, he berates them if they don't agree with him or challenge them, that he's a brawler. Some even argue, that he is racist. So what do you say to those kinds of criticisms?
I've never been a fan of his rhetoric, and I disagree with it, and it's not the way it should be handled. But at the end of the day, the most important thing for the person that represents this district is not to focus on the negative and not to focus on that, but it's to focus on the issues that affect us here. Not allow those types of distractions to take away from that person's job to represent this district in Washington. There are 435 members of Congress plus the 100 members of the Senate, and if they're going to sit there and focus on one person's Twitter account, they're not doing their job as a member of Congress. They're not doing their job as a representative here in the Central Valley. My job, and whoever else would ever represent any district else in the nation, Their job is to represent their district and not focus on those types of things. Focus on their job, focus on their issues, focus on their constituents, and make sure they deliver for them.
All right, we're here with David Valadao as he announces his candidacy for the 21st Congressional District seat. You're watching Kern County in Depth. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Kern County in Depth. We're joined today by former Republican Congressman David Valadao of the 21st Congressional District, the district you represented for 3 terms. Let me get right into a little bit of policy here, but specifically something that your opponent, sitting Congressman T.J. Cox, Democrat of Fresno, has promised to do, and that is to hold town halls. His specific promise was 4 town halls in 1 year. So far he's held 2. A third he's going to be holding later this month. What is your belief and view on town halls?
So we did a lot of those in the very beginning, and we saw them as ineffective. I mean, we still did them. We still did a lot of what we called community coffees, and we would reach out. We would make sometimes as many as 12,000 personal phone calls to people individually, inviting them to be there. But the response we got from most constituents is they liked the teletown halls. They liked us calling them at home. They liked the ability to be on the phone and actually communicate with us that way. We would get sometimes as many as a few thousand on the phone at the same time, and they would ask their questions, and every single person that did not get their question asked during the town hall, we would follow up and call them personally, individually, and answer their questions or address whatever type of concern they had. As far as meeting with constituents, yeah, I did quite a bit of it. I wasn't so much as what I would say person that would bring in the cameras, because I always felt that was a little disconcerting for people. I remember one time we had one of our face-to-face meetings that we spent a lot of time doing, where folks would come in and take their turn and just sit down and ask me questions or talk to me about whatever issue they had. And we let a reporter in there for a little bit, and you could tell it made that person uncomfortable. And so I've always struggled with that. It's not something that I like to invite all the cameras in, because you want people to feel comfortable and bring up their concerns and talk about them freely. And I think that's very important, because I want to hear what's going on with their lives. It's not so much worried about what the cameras are doing. And I think that's something that I've found that's negative about what he's been doing and how he's been handling it. I do like the teletown halls better, because I was able to do them more often. We did them every few weeks, and we reached thousands of people, and the feedback I got was the most positive. As far as every other way that we did it, we sometimes would allow press to be there, but we weren't making as much of a show about it, because that wasn't the aim. The aim was reach out to voters, talk to them, listen to them, and figure out what the issues are. And by us calling them individually and making sure that they knew what was going on, I thought that was very important as well.
And so you would have then at least some sort of a town hall, you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. I'll never stop doing that. I think those were the most helpful, and I enjoyed doing those. But I also enjoyed doing them when they were productive and you had good feedback from folks. And I also like to listen to constituents, and when they told me one way worked better, that's the way we did it.
All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. You're a dairy farmer. I want to talk about tariffs. The tariffs are causing a great deal of nervousness on Wall Street with investors, and considerable harm on what many farmers say on their farms. So what's the end game of this trade war, and how do we find a mutually beneficial agreement?
So obviously China's taken up a lot of the oxygen in the room, and everyone's talking about China, but they're also overlooking that there's been a few wins there. Right now we're hearing about Japan. Japan is huge here for the Central Valley, and we're excited about that opportunity. It looks like there will be a deal linked really soon. USMCA, the replacement for NAFTA, that's a deal that the president renegotiated, and they're waiting on Congress to act. And this is one of the failures what should have been resolved a long time ago. They complain about not having trade deals done, but again, they do nothing to solve it. USMCA is there, Mexico's already done and approved it, Canada's ready, and why hasn't the U.S. acted? I think the U.S. needs to step up, Congress needs to step up and actually move that piece of legislation and sign that in. The farmers here in the Central Valley are supportive, all of them are. I've seen letters with over 1,000 ag groups across the nation who would like to see that get done as quickly as possible, but there's been that failure in leadership in Congress to actually move that forward. Congress needs to act, they have not, and that's where our leadership here in the Central Valley has been failing. Yeah, tariffs are not something I like, it's not something I support, but it is part of the overall game. But to just focus on one is wrong as well. And you've got 3 trade deals that have been positive, that have worked in our direction. I didn't mention the Korea-U.S. chorus, but that one was done and passed and has been beneficial for us. The Japan one is in the works right now, and it looks like there's agreement there. Just need that one to move forward. And then USMCA, all very positive, all very helpful, and all things that Congress needs to work on, instead of just focusing on the negatives. China, that has to get resolved. And the issue that keeps slowing that progress on China is the most important part. It's the ability to make sure that the trade deal is actually held, and that's called enforcement. And so every time we hear about the deal being close, as soon as the U.S. starts to find a way to make sure that the laws are held and that the rules are enforced and that everyone lives by those rules to make sure that we have a fair trade system, China walks. That's a big problem. If we're going to pass a trade deal that doesn't have the strength to enforce it, why even waste our time?
Let's talk gun control. We've recently had mass shootings here in California, in Gilroy, in Dayton, Ohio, and of course in El Paso, Texas. Where do you stand on gun control, and do you support universal background checks? Well,
I support background checks. I want to make sure that the people that that are able to purchase guns have the ability to actually own them, and I think that's very important. I don't want criminals owning guns. I've always been a tough on crime guy, and I want to make sure that whoever goes and purchases a weapon should have the ability to buy one, and that they don't have a criminal record. And so I think it's important to make sure that we keep the guns out of hands of people who want to do us harm. Now, as far as making sure things like have happened here lately and don't happen again, well, making sure that we have the ability to, or at least follow up on some of the threats that we've gotten. And a lot of these shootings have happened because there's either law enforcement or someone didn't see the signs in that person that there was something going on in their head and it needed to be resolved, or at least needed to be approached, or they needed to be talked to, or even arrested. And I think law enforcement is starting to do a better job of that today. We've seen a few shootings thwarted because of that, because they've taken threats seriously, or they've taken comments seriously, and I think that's an important part of this as well.
All right, you're watching Kern County in Depth as we're joined by David Valadao. He's announced his candidacy for the 21st Congressional District. Stay with us. We'll have some final comments after this. Welcome back to Kern County in Depth, and finally, just wanted to say thank you, David Valadao, for being with us today. It means a lot that you're here as you announce your candidacy for the 21st Congressional District seat in 2020.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. And one final thank you to make would be to Jim Scott. Thank you for allowing me to keep your seat warm. Jim will be right back here next week, and until then, for all of us at 17 News, we appreciate your time and wish you a very good day. So long.
Kern County in Depth with Jim Scott is a production of Kern Golden Empire Television. For more information on how you can contribute, simply visit kerngoldenempire.com.